Thank you so much for being here on a Monday evening today. It's a full house and that makes us very happy. I'm Malvika, I'm from the leadership team at LWL. I take care of strategy. I'm here to welcome you all to Conversation Over Cocktails with two fabulous women with us tonight. As you know, Ladies Who Lead is a members-only club. We curate special premium experiences for our members to give them opportunities to learn and grow in their individual careers as well as for their businesses. And there's a ton of stuff that we do for founders. There's espresso for corporates and professionals. There's roundtables. There are a lot of these evenings having conversations with great leaders and inspiring women. And if you have any questions about LWL, about a referral that you want to make, or we have a lot of new modules starting as well, you can come interact with the team and ask your questions. We're happy to interact. I'm Malvika, there's Deepthi, Anisha, Ruchita, Yashvi, and everyone here. Please do stop in and say hi. I'm not going to take much of your time. Hand over the mic to Gauri. She's the top restaurateur and the founder of Food Matters Group. And she's going to be introducing our guest today and taking it forward from here. Gauri.
Thank you. So good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here. And we're all very, very excited to have Radhika with us today. So, she doesn't need an introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway. So, Radhika Gupta has quite literally carved out a niche for herself in the financial domain, traversing the crooked path with panache, becoming one of the youngest Indian CEOs at 33, setting up India's first domestic hedge fund at 36, an appointed CEO, and being the country's only female head of a major asset manager are only a few inspiring milestones of Radhika. Popularly known as the girl with a broken neck, Radhika's story includes moments of immense low self-esteem because of flawed appearance as per acceptable society norms. Not only did she rise up to these physical and emotional challenges, but today, Radhika is a successful businesswoman, author, TEDx speaker, and recently a mother. Congratulations.
Thank you.
She's also a very powerful voice on LinkedIn and is admired by people across age groups for her slice of life nuggets. Radhika, welcome to this evening.
Thank you, Gauri, and I can't believe how many people are here on a Monday night.
Pressure.
Pressure.
Okay, so we're going to get right into this. I've heard this, that as an entrepreneur, a mother, and a wife, you can only ever get two of them right, and one is always sacrificed. I've heard you in a recent interview share about how you have two fabulous twins, your baby and your work. You've obviously left out your husband in all of this.
Thanks.
Luckily, he's not here. And, that a mother can love her twins equally. I know how many women feel guilty and are not really sure about how to balance both roles. So how's it been going for you on that front? And, what are some of the learnings you've had in the, 2 months?
Okay. So before I give you the answer to this question, I've probably answered this question in the last 2 months. Every time I go on CNBC, I'm first asked this question. I don't know why. I don't know why fathers are not asked this question when they show up on a stock market show. But anyway, I'm not going to give you the answer that I gave on CNBC. But I will also give you the answer with the disclaimer that I feel that when people ask me this question, they often look to emulate the example. And my one learning in the last 2.5 months is there is no right answer and there is no example to emulate, because I genuinely believe that everybody's circumstances, situation, and needs are unique. So I get very worried when people think of, you can hear my story, but it's not only the right story. And I'm saying this because when I was pregnant, I read an interview of a very prominent woman who I respect, who said that the only way to have a successful career is to have kids very early. And here I was popping a baby at 39. And I don't think that there is one answer. So I wanted to say that. I actually, when I was pregnant in October, to be very frank, while I was very happy, part of me thought that the world had ended. Because, I was pregnant at the peak of my career. There were not too many examples of female CEOs in the Indian context. And I was doing a lot of stuff. I was writing this book, I was doing a house, all of that. And I was actually Googling around to find examples. I found Marissa Mayer's example. She's the only example I could find. She was CEO of Yahoo. And I took tremendous heart in that example. And incidentally, I was applying to become the vice chairman of Amphi when I found out I was pregnant. And I said, I shouldn't do this because how am I going to handle this? And I read Marissa Mayer's story and I said, no, I'm not going to give up on an opportunity because I'm pregnant. I'm going to figure it out. And honestly, my pregnancy became a breeze after that. I probably had the best period of my career during pregnancy. Someone called it trimester 4, which is the month after delivery. And I will not lie, that was tough. And I hadn't planned before. So a lot of people in my office, there was this whole rumor about how long am I going to be on maternity leave? And some people said 3 months, and there was betting on that and all of that. And the truth is, I didn't have any answer and I didn't make any plans. I really didn't. I said I'd figure it out. And what I realized 2-3 weeks into my pregnancy, and I'm also someone who, my baby was born in the work from home generation, so I'm fortunate. I realized I needed to go back to work for my own sense of emotional self. For 17, 18 years, I have just been working. So in that sense, I have a 18-year-old baby. I mean, you said twins, right? This is my 18-year-old baby. My career is my 18-year-old baby. And I can't stay away from it for long. So I decided to go back to work from home 3 weeks in, and then I started going to office 6 weeks in. 6 weeks is apparently the legal limit before which you can't show up to office in India. We also learned that there's a law, there's a labor law. A labor consultant told me you can't show up to office. So if you're ever planning to, don't do it, because I tried and it failed. And so I go in 2 days a week and I work from home, but I am working full throttle. I am embracing all the new opportunities beyond work. So outside of the 2 twins, I do have side hobbies, which I continue to do. And I'm finding ways to manage, to be honest. My husband works from home one day. My mother-in-law comes one day. We manage, we figure it out. There's a lot of time management. There's a lot of planning. But I'll tell you one thing, there's no guilt. And that's the one message that I would say. There is no guilt. I left home at 8:30 today. I'm going to get home at 9:30 tonight. But genuinely, there is no guilt because on Saturday and Sunday, I took my husband was out. I took my baby alone to Alibag. Me, him, and our help went on the Roro and we went to Alibag and I spent 2 days with him. So there is no guilt.
That's amazing. And, I kudos to you for getting to this point already because, in my experience, honestly, I have a 9-year-old daughter. And I think it was about a year before I got over this guilt factor of going back to work so soon, and a lot of it actually stemmed from the people around us, right? Because the societal pressure that we face with schools telling us that you should be home when your kid gets home.
Trimester 4 mothers get too much advice.
Yeah.
Everyone bloody wants to give you advice.
Well, here's some news. It's not going to stop.
I've learned to ignore the advice.
No, so it took me a little longer, and I think, and it came from even, someone like my mom who's very liberal and whom I've always looked up to. But, I think, and you've written about this in your book, that there's a different generation and things, the same thing about having children can be so different for our parents' generation as it is for us.
Gauri, my mother, she went to St. Stephen's and she's a tall, beautiful, smart woman. She got into IIM Ahmedabad, and this sounds sacrilegious to say this in her generation. She married my father, who was a foreign service officer, and she gave that up for him, okay? And then she raised us, and she built her career in education, because that's the only thing a diplomat's wife can do. 2 days ago, she was telling me I might be taking on another large opportunity. She's telling me, you will be an exceptional mother, but because you've had a baby, you're not going to give up on any opportunity that comes your way, and we're all going to be there and stand. And this is someone who did that,
Amazing.
so many years ago, 40 years ago. So I think, parents also evolve.
Absolutely. So let's talk about that third person in the equation, which is your husband. um, I want to kind of go back a little bit in your career when you actually, started a business together. And I know a lot of people here do work with their spouse. What was that like?
Okay, so again, I don't want to paint it as roses. And my husband and I still work in the same firm and in the same part of the same firm. So even though we're not entrepreneurs, we're professionals, we still work together. Uh, it is not easy. It wasn't easy during the business phase. It's less tricky now. Um, there are great upsides to doing it because you have a tremendous sense of trust, camaraderie, understanding. Even today, if he has to work late and there's a big event in the stock market, he doesn't need to give me an explanation. I know why things are important. And that would be true in your industry and any industry that is represented here. It is not emotionally easy. In the entrepreneurship days, I think actually what was very tough is both of us didn't have an income. So that aspect is hard. So if you're looking at ever starting a business with a spouse, there's no single spouse with the stable income. So that I think actually used to get to us. I've written a little bit about this in my book, but that used to get to us. There is also, at least in our house, there is no separation between home and life. I mean, do we discuss office politics at home? Of course we do. Do we discuss the stock market at home? Of course we do. I mean, it is very hard to have that division. And I should tell you, to give Nalin due credit, society also doesn't make it easy for a man. I mean, we say women have it tough. Society doesn't make it very easy for a man who works in the same company as his woman. So there are all kinds of challenges, and it takes time to settle an equation and find our equation. I think it has taken us years to find that piece. So it's not as rosy as it looks. It has both sides.
I think the secret is to having a guest room in your house that you can go to every so often.
Correct.
You
Or a
know,
sleeping bag in your office.
for him. So women are often, we've talked about this just now about women being burdened with these long to-do lists. And, as someone who's so invested in women, what do you think should be on the not to-do list?
I think not feeling guilty, which is what I said, should not, is the one thing. And not taking out time for yourself, right? The easiest thing for you to say is, I have career and I have home. You're a person. You've got to live. You've got to pursue hobbies. You've got to spend time with your family. You've got to do things that actually make you happy. I feel like the one place women compared to men don't invest enough in is their own personal growth. And personal growth is not just career. So there is career, there is family, but we don't take out time for personal growth because we say, अच्छा office है, वो तो ज़रूरी है, that is important, that I have to go to. Home, I have to be perfect at everything. But this is ignorable. So we forget to network, we forget to come to things. I hope it's changing with this generation. So we ignore. I mean, the fact that so many people are here on a Monday night gives me tremendous hope that perhaps we are changing that. But we skip the important for what is urgent, and there is enough that is urgent.
No, and I think kudos to ladies who lead for setting up this platform for women to network. I want to go back in time and talk about your growing years. As a child, you've written about how you were bullied and how it was difficult because you were moving around between different countries, and it was a challenge every time you were in a new environment, right? What was some of the learnings that led you to discover your strengths in the course of this adversity?
So I'll tell you, it was a little random. I am someone, and I've written and spoken about this a lot, who, like many people, has grown up with tremendous self-confidence issues. I don't think I've said this in the book, but I think till 31, if someone actually told me I looked nice, I was like, jhoot bol raha hoga. I mean, that was my level of self-confidence issues, and I absolutely hated getting photographed. And this is ironic for someone who gets photographed so much today. So I grew up with a tremendous sense of self-confidence issues. And my learning is that when you don't have self-confidence, it is a self-destructive animal, because people look at you and they point out stuff, and you start overthinking every single comment and every single reaction. So I'll give you an example. I walked into this room, I think outside of one or two others, I'm the only person wearing a sari, right? Um, Another version of me would have become very insecure about that. Oh, they probably think I'm looking like a behenji. These would be the thoughts going in my head. It would reflect in the way I walk, it would reflect in the way I talk, it would reflect in everything. I got over this because I did that talk. So, and I did the talk, A Girl with a Broken Neck, really on a lark. And I did it without telling anyone I was going to do it. So I didn't tell my mother, father, husband, anybody. I said, I'm just going to go out and do this for myself. And literally nobody had, I didn't even tell anybody at work. And then the talk released, and I said, hey, this talk is released, and you guys never knew any of this. And the reactions I got and the kind of emails I get till date have convinced me that you just have to go and put yourself out there, and everybody has a problem. No guy looks perfect, by the way. There was, I think I've said this in my book, there was a incidents where Money Control wrote an article about how 6 CEOs invest. Okay, 5 of them were guys, and I was one of them. And then some guy on Twitter comments on the fact that I have a squint in the eye. Okay, are those other 5 CEOs Hrithik Roshan? I mean, they're just not, right? So why should, but you have to point out that I have a squint in my eye. And that's when I went and said, okay, I have a squint, I have a neck issue, my weight is not perfect, but I'm still beautiful in my head. And finally, that is all that matters.
Yeah, I think it's that self belief, right? That we just need to just have, and we have to build that, and
The one thing I would say is that all of us live 2 versions of life. All of us live a in front of the stage version, which is this version, and all of us live most of it backstage. And backstage is chaos. Like before this, I was sorting out a crisis in office. I'm going to go home to a 2.5-month-old child. All of us have a backstage. What we offer, and backstage, you don't look like this either. You don't look like this either. What we often do is we compare our backstage to someone else's life in front of the camera. And I would tell you, never do that. Backstage is backstage, and it's messy and it's chaotic and it's confusing. So don't compare your backstage to someone else's Instagram feed.
Absolutely.
Instagram, though, is not even front stage, it's exaggerated front stage.
By the way, for those of you who haven't watched this talk, The Girl with the Broken Neck, it is just fantastic. Best 17 minutes of my week for sure. So please watch that, for some laugh and some inspiration and all of that together. So you've talked a lot about rejection in the book, and we all know that rejection is not easy to deal with, whether in work or in life in general. And you've written about, difficult decisions about rejection, risks, and imperfection are not usually dinner table conversations in the average Indian home, right? So, and you've talked about how you also tried to end your life at one point when you got rejected by 7 consulting firms, right? How do you think we can normalize the chat around the R word?
I think we need to talk a lot more. And I think the only way to do this is genuinely shared stories. My problem with, so I'll give you an example of something we do in our office, and that there's a interesting story out of this. I manage about 300 odd people today, and they're divided into small teams. There's sales and marketing and product and all of that stuff. And every 6 months, I do a catch up with every team, and so I meet everybody, right? And it's a catch up, it's either in person or virtual, and I don't talk in that catch up at all. I just tell people, ask me your questions, and I will talk. Okay. Now, initially, the questions used to be about PNL and all that lovely stuff. Now, 3 years into doing this, everybody talks. And like there was a question a few days ago about how this financial year is not as good of a financial year as last year. And a girl said, I'm feeling anxious. What do I do? And I said, I'm also feeling anxious. Let's talk about our anxiety together. And now, we did a session for new joinees today. And so we were asking them, why did you join us? they've heard about this session. They've heard about the fact that these open conversations happen. And they said, we've never seen it in any other mutual fund company, that people are having open conversations. We need to have open conversations. We spend in organizations countless money on offsites, motivational speakers, all of this stuff. It is the easiest for us to go out and have an open conversation. So I asked my HR, "ये होता क्यों नहीं है ज़्यादातर जगह?" They said the CEO is scared that what question will someone ask? What can someone ask you that you should be scared of? So have open conversations. When you focus on having open conversations, people will bring issues like rejection up to you. Kick off your town hall with an icebreaker. We kicked off one of our small leadership town halls with an icebreaker that said, tell us one thing in your childhood that made you nervous, that bothered you, that shaped who you are. And people talked about lots of things. They talked about weight issues, they talked about the problems of being an introvert. And you should see the bonds that form when you do that. So at home and office, have open conversations.
Is it easier said than done though, if you're growing up in a family that you might want to have those conversations, but your parents or your siblings are not as open to it?
I grew up in a very traditional family. My father served the government. So his impression of CEO was reserved, sitting in a conversation, maintaining a distance, and having an aura. When the talk released, I was terrified that he would be embarrassed that his daughter has spoken about such things. Ironically, his friends from the Foreign Service in the 1950s, in the 1960s, were the ones who gave maximum appreciation for the talk. And the energy in him changed. He actually became the biggest proponent of the talk. So we sometimes forget how families also evolve if we are willing to evolve.
Absolutely. You've often mentioned how in your industry you were the only sari in a room full of suits. What have been your takeaways dealing with gender bias and breaking the proverbial glass ceiling?
Okay, so one, I'm not going to lie that gender bias doesn't exist. I think any lady who's sitting here, anyone who's been a part of this has had a really tough journey. I mean, it's a lie to pretend it doesn't exist. Some of us have it easier, some of us have it tougher. But I also don't, and I said this in the book, I don't like the question very much because I feel too much of the conversation focuses on bias, and what that does is subconsciously it limits your potential in your head because you go into every conversation thinking, oh God, there's bias, and you imagine bias when there is none. I have been guilty of this myself. When I joined the MF industry, I joined the board of the association, which is the Association of Mutual Funds of India. And of course, I was the only woman on the board. And I would refuse to speak in board meetings. I would just be silent. And in my head, I was like, all these people are judging me. I am the only woman in the room. No one is going to listen to my voice. And I'm sure half of that was true. It took me years to realize that I can assert my voice. And I became vice chairman of that association finally. So those guys were not as evil as I thought they were, right? Clearly. And there was a lot of celebration about that fact. So the reason I don't like to talk about it as much is I know it exists, but it holds us back. And I genuinely think women have a troubled relationship with ambition. In our head, we limit both our abilities and our ambition. And I will tell you that this is something our co-founder said, that if you are an ambitious woman today and you're going out there, and you're out there, given all the focus on diversity, given all the focus on ESG, you actually have an advantage because there's so few of you. There are actually so few of you, and people are realizing that.
I have to tell you, I completely agree with that. Take full advantage of this.
150% advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you an example of what happened with me. I was appointed to the managing committee of the Restaurant Association of India, and I was told by the then president that Gauri, we'd really like you to be a part of it. There are no women on the committee, and I was offended for all of 2 seconds, and I was like, fine. If that's what got me a seat at the table, that's totally fine, you know.
And then once I'm at the table, I'll prove
Exactly.
myself on my own. Someone once told me in my own organization that I was on a very prominent panel very early into the. He's like, you know, we're very lucky we have a diversity CEO. And I was offended for about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then I was like, screw it, man. You know, small AMC CEOs don't get a spot on the table. If that's
Yeah.
what got it, fine. I'll live with it and I will make the most out of it. So I'm saying milk whatever advantages you have.
Listen, my husband used to take me to all the municipality offices when we were getting licenses for the restaurant because he was like, if you're there, they're not going to mess around with me too much. And I was like, okay, whatever it takes to get the job done.
People in the country use their Gujarati connection if there's a bunch of Gujaratis in the room. People in the White Boys Club use their whatever connection. So we can't use our women advantage. Then we are a diversity card. Yeah.
Let's talk about your leadership style. How would you describe it?
Okay. Okay. This is what I would
Don't say
say.
you don't like this question either because
No, I
I'm
don't-
like
I like the
tearing this
question.
up and
I take the responsibility of leadership, the privilege of leadership very, very seriously. But I think I try not to take the title very seriously, if that makes sense. I want to be exactly the opposite of what my father said leader is, which is be on the battlefield. I get most annoyed. And this is strange coming from a CEO with conversations around strategy. At least in the business I represent, I think ground up execution is really the heart and soul of the business. Culture, doing things fast, agility, getting people to work together. And that is enabled when you have a team that's apolitical, that's well bonded, that works together. And I think that starts from the top. So I think of my responsibilities as someone who gets the team together. If I go to office, the day I go to office these days, because I only work in office 2 days a week, I make sure I have no Zoom calls and very few meetings. I spend at least 50% of the day on the floor randomly laughing with people. And it adds, in my view, that's the biggest value I can add. So my job is culture. My job is being a brand ambassador because I represent a retail brand. And my job is, of course, managing stakeholders. But I like to take the responsibility seriously. I mean, finally, the buck stops with me, but the title a little less seriously. I get very amused, and I heard this conversation today. And someone said, you know, the CEO is coming to talk to me. I'm excited. I mean, why should that be a big deal? It should be normal.
fair enough. You talk about the big C word, culture, right? Now, I know that it's one of the biggest sort of it's so important for an organization, and we're going through that right now. We're at this sort of inflection point where we've really grown a lot, since surviving COVID, and now we've got over sort of 200 people. I'm not going to compare this to the organization you run, but it is at that place where we need to sort of put down what this culture really is, right? It might be something that I know and a few of the people who've been with us for a long time kind of know and the values of the company. But how do you actually go about setting the culture of an organization?
It's a great question. And when I started in Edelweiss Mutual Fund, we grappled with this a lot 5 years ago. And we also did similar exercises where we said we would put down values and we would give awards for values and we do all that stuff and we would do it on a wall. Um, and then we also said we would have an external tagline to tell the people what our positioning was and what we stood for. And we did contests and we did all this lovely stuff. And we decided to finally do nothing. I think culture, firstly, has to be lived and then put on a tagline. That's what we finally came to. I think we're 5 years later at a point where we can define culture. So the first advice I have to anyone on this is don't rush to define your culture. Discover it first. And then definition is the easiest thing. Definition is just coming up with a cute bunch of lines. That can happen. Um, Firstly, I think culture. I mean, it's a cliche, but I think culture starts at the top. You know, many of us are moms here, and the one piece of good mommy advice that I have got is finally kids emulate what you do. That is true for teams, right? So if you want agility in your culture, you as a leader also have to approve things quickly. You also can't take time. If you want to respect deadlines, that starts from you. And I think the power of, I'll give you a simple example. I'm very active on social media. I've never pushed anybody on my team to be active on social media ever, not once. I am active. I think in the last 2 years, suddenly everybody is taking classes on social media. Suddenly everyone's having conversations on personal brand. It's just come from setting examples. So I think culture is built that way. I also think culture is learnt in the tough times. I think culture is shaped in the tough times. We went through two very trying years in the organization, 18, 19. Those from financial services will know Edelweiss Group, our parent company, was under hell. The NBFC crisis had happened and there was just a lot of noise. So much so that employees were calling at that point. They would get calls from the market saying, your company is going to go bankrupt. Are you going to quit? You know, is your CEO going to quit? All this noise used to happen. Um, a lot of culture was shaped then because in the tough times, I think the decisions we took finally became what culture is today. So I think culture comes from the top. Culture is shaped in the toughest moments of decision making.
You talk about these challenges of people possibly moving on. I know that for entrepreneurs and leaders, hiring and retaining good talent is really one of the biggest challenges, right? Um, what are some of the key things that you look for in a candidate, and what are the non-negotiables?
I think I am the easiest person to interview with because I literally ask people two questions. One is tell me about yourself. I mean, it's a standard question, right? And I think the question is a beautiful question because you can learn so much about a human being from that question. You can learn about how they present themselves, you can learn about their brevity, you can learn about their storytelling, you can learn about their passion, you can learn about their humility. Literally, all the personal qualities in a candidate that you want, you get in that single question. It helps you. And the second thing we look for is hunger and agility. So, finally, we don't, at least in financial services, we don't do rocket science. Maybe in the food industry, you do. But in financial services, we don't do rocket science. We're selling SIPs for a living. Um, if you are hungry to do the job, if you are what I often call chappal gizzo attitude, if you're ready to work hard and if you're hungry, you will do well. And if you're agile, I think agility is very important in most industries because at least ours is going through rapid change. Rapid change. What worked in the past will not work. It's not an entrepreneurial effort, but Edelweiss AMC is as good as an entrepreneurship effort because it was very small when it started. If you are going to do what the biggies did, it's you're not going to go anywhere. So the worst line I like hearing from people is, "This is what happens in industry. Let us do that." What industry? So that's what we look for. We look for hunger, agility. And the third quality I like in people is confidence. I always said we have lived being a 36th rank player, we're a 13th rank player today. Uh, but in your head, you can't think like a loser. You have to think like a market leader. Because honestly, if you're sitting at 36, and you think like 36, you will end up at 45. If you think like one, there's hope that you might end up at 15. So these are generally the qualities we look for in people, and I think they're true of most industries.
And what about the retention aspect?
Okay, I'll tell you something. We've had fantastic retention ratios, but I have learned to become not emotional about turnover. And it's a learning that's come only in the last maybe year and a half. Because all people will quit, guys. It's okay. And I remember my first firm, McKinsey, they really get this right. There are only a few things you should remember. One is people should quit on good terms. And I don't think Indian organizations do a great job at this, right? I wrote about this on LinkedIn. We do a terrible job. झगड़ा करते हैं उस time पे, salary नहीं देते, ये नहीं करते. I've learned we throw a farewell party for each one who quits. I meet everyone who quits. We do an exit interview because when someone does a reference check on your firm, who is going to give the most honest opinion? An ex employee, highly likely, right? So, those guys are actually your biggest brand ambassadors in the market. And by the way, we've had at least 10 people who've quit who've come back later. So, one, let's not get very emotional about turnover. People are employees, they're not promoters, they're building careers. As long as they've quit after having a good experience and as long as they've quit on good terms, it is okay. McKinsey has employees and analysts quit every 2 years. They go on to hire McKinsey as consultants, right? So I think we should become a little less emotional about turnover. Um, and yet, and the second thing I would say is, we're living in the era of the great resignation. Let's look inward before we look outward first. It's very easy to say young people don't want to work. They are
Quiet
always talking
quitters.
about work life balance. They are quiet quitters, all this. Let's make offices where people want to work. Nah? Let's give people a sense of purpose. We got this feedback, by the way, 6 months ago that our office is too cramped and our office is too formal. And this is financial services. We're redoing the whole office because we're struggling with people coming back to work after COVID. This is a problem everyone grapples with. We're rethinking and redoing the office. Let's try and build an office where people want to come back to work post COVID.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I completely resonates with me in our industry as well. And what really hurts is when someone quits to go work with a competing restaurant, right? And then you go to the restaurant and you meet them there. That's like really
Do
the
yourself
last
a
thing you
favor. I've told my team this. Let's not bash people after they quit here. Let's not ruin their legacy in the organization. I would hate. I've built the company I've built with great love. And I'm a professional, I'm not an owner. And I've told Rashesh and Venkat, one day I will quit, right? This is a high chance. But the worst thing for my legacy would be to bash me after I do that. So let's not do that. Let's say he was a great guy, but he went on to pursue opportunities somewhere else. That one signaling, by the way, helps keep a lot of people because, you know, I've had a case where a very senior person quit in another part of the organization, and when he quit, there was a lot of bashing of him. And people said, यार वो 15 साल काम किया है उसके साथ इतनी bashing है तो मेरी क्या value है यहाँ? Think about it. That's actually how people think. So don't bash people when they quit.
No, and I also think one of the important things is that when you don't bash people, as you say, people will be more honest when they're leaving, right? Right now, a lot of people lie about where they're going, why they're leaving, and that's not helpful to anyone, honestly. So I think that if
Listen
you
to exit interviews. I listen to every exit interview and they're very insightful, especially young people's.
let's talk about personal branding. I know that's something that you excel at, and do you think that the idea of personal branding is commonly misunderstood?
Okay, so I am told I'm very good at this. I am not a master of the brand. And I've learned it organically. I think personal branding is misunderstood in India because any form of self branding is considered self promotional. Now, and I think women have it even harder because we struggle to even praise ourselves, especially compared to male counterparts. I think the first thing you have to get out of your head is that being self promotional is a bad thing. I mean, consumer companies spend a lot of money doing promotion. So, being out there is important. So there is nothing wrong in personal branding, and get it out of your head. What is wrong is if you are, and I'm speaking in the capacity of an employer also, is if you're doing personal branding at the cost of the organization that you're working at. If you're only sitting and writing LinkedIn posts all day and not doing your primary job, of course your employer is going to get upset, right? But if you are a good employee going out there and doing well in your industry, it is good for your company. So I actively now push employees on personal branding. For instance, we have this association, AMFI, and it has many committees, and the committees represent people from different mutual funds. When I joined, we had zero representation on committees because of our size. I've got one representative from Edelweiss on every committee. It's very important for their branding because they get to meet everybody in the industry. They get to know the regulator. I push guys out there on social media. I push them. I actually told the PR guy, make sure I'm less than 50% of the media coverage of Edelweiss. So strong personal brands help organizations, and evolved organizations, and not everybody is evolved, are beginning to realize and appreciate that a lot of, in the case of entrepreneurship, the entrepreneur is often the face of the brand, the CEO is often the face of the brand. And what is wrong with it? I want to start, and we can talk a lot more about personal branding, but personal branding is not a bad thing. And the second thing I would say is personal branding does not take the effort you think it does. It takes less effort than watching Netflix every day.
You share a lot of personal insights and your highs and lows on LinkedIn, especially. And but how does someone start? Where do you start with this personal branding?
Okay, so I did a session for LinkedIn on this, and don't overthink it. Okay, is my first thing. I mean, I'll give you a few quick recipes for how to do this. If you're determined to do this, pick a platform. You can pick LinkedIn, you can pick Twitter. I'm not an Instagram kind of person, but it may lend itself well to a business like yours. It doesn't lend itself well to us. Pick one platform and say that you're going to write one meaningful post a week. Okay, because if you're going to go down this route, you have to be somewhat consistent. Opening a Twitter account and writing once in 2 months is not going to get you anywhere if you want to go down this route. So pick a platform and say, I'm going to write one post a week. Believe me, in that week, there will be something that happens in your office or home that will give you inspiration. Your life is genuinely not that boring. It cannot be. Okay? Something will happen. Don't do it for likes. Go out and write the post. Don't overthink it. I literally write my posts in traffic time in the car to pass time. I like to write. And I mostly write them on a bad day. It's my way of venting out bad days. So write something and don't worry about how many likes you get, and then write again the next week. See what content works for you, see what content is doing well, and you will discover it. A few other quick things: avoid religion and politics. It will save you from getting trolled, which is an important part of continuing to do this. And find an area or find a niche that's important. So it could be food. I write on only leadership and personal finance. I don't write on anything else because unfortunately you can't be an expert on everything. You really can't be writing about films, soccer, your work
Maybe you can
life.
throw motherhood in now.
Yeah, motherhood I can throw in, but you have to be authentic. Content that works is genuinely authentic, and so I never write or use sports analogies in anything I do because I don't watch sports. Yeah, it's just I don't care if everyone is giving Dhoni analogies. I can't do them. So don't do what you can't, and you will find your audience. But go out and do it.
No, absolutely. I completely agree. And I think that you never know what's going to hit the spot with someone else. And the point is to put it out there because till you do that, you're not going to know, right? So
It really isn't that hard. I think I had 1,000 LinkedIn followers 4 years ago. I'm an influencer on LinkedIn now, and I mean I haven't done magic.
I think you have like more than 300,000 followers now.
Yeah,
So yeah.
but I haven't done magic. I've just
You know what? You can't buy followers on LinkedIn.
You
So
can't buy
it's
followers
all
on LinkedIn.
legit.
And don't worry about followers anyway.
Absolutely. We all like to think about how and analyze about our life unfolding and how we define success. Um, how has the definition of success evolved for you over the years, and what's your current idea of success?
I think it's a super question, Gauri, because what I have come to believe is that success is very individual and very personal, and it's the only way it can be. I think in my 20s, like many of us, my definition of success was very conventional, working for a certain brand, a certain amount of money, etc., etc., etc. And there's nothing wrong with that definition. Over the years, I've realized what matters to me. And I think purpose is very different for everybody. So, for me, impact matters. Impact at large scale matters, which is why I choose to work in a retail business. There are lots of places where I could work and earn a lot more money, but they just don't give me the sense of purpose. For me, freedom to work really matters. There are multiple places where I would just not be able to work because I need a certain amount of operating freedom. Uh, for me, the ability to have a voice matters where I work, and not a lot of places give you that. So these are things that matter to me. So my definition of success is that it is having impact. It is having the freedom to work and craft things. It is the ability to have a voice. These are my definitions of success. Um, And there are things that don't matter. So when you have a definition of success, you can't say I want money, fame, this, that, that. वैसे होता नहीं है ना. It's like asking for a spouse who has Mukesh Ambani's money and Hrithik Roshan's body and I mean Sai Baba's sense of peace. वो होता नहीं है life में, right? So there are also things that don't matter to me. And so money matters, but beyond a certain point, it doesn't matter. There are a whole set of things. Work life balance does not matter to me. And I know this is a contentious topic, so I don't have a problem with 18-hour work days. But I'm not saying that. But so I'm not. My only point is that define what matters to you and make conscious choices and realize that each choice has a trade off and be comfortable with that trade off.
I'm going to quote something that I've like about a million quotes from your book, but this one is particularly, I think relevant today. You've written that the quest for excellence pushes you hard, and everyone needs their own circle of critics who come from a positive and caring place. Who is that circle for you, and how should one go about building it?
It's evolved over the years. I've written about a personal advisory board also in the book, and there are a few ex-bosses who are good critics. There are a few people who have nothing to do with the corporate world who I've met. For instance, the person who mentored me, Captain Raghu, I've written about in the book through my speaking journey, is a phenomenal critic. And I know he's a critic because he says things that no one else will say to me, but he also pushes to give me opportunities. So he just wants to make sure that, I'm reaching my maximum potential. And I think that's what you want in a critic. These are people who actually have more faith in you than you do in yourself, which I think he does. I think his aspirations for me are higher than my aspirations. But he is also ruthlessly critical. So he's called me and said, your tweet is nonsense, get rid of that. And for reasons, because it will have implications. He's called me and said, you went on TV and your hair was done terribly. And I wrote this in the book, that you wore a black suit and you had black hair and you look like a grand witch. You don't dress like that for TV. And it's true. I mean, if you're wearing black on black, you look really bad in a recording. So he's actually called me before I recorded the girl with a broken neck on the kind of sari and the kind of blouse to wear. Who does this? A critic is.
How does someone go about identifying that circle?
I think they will come. I think we all have them. One is, I think, have a mental openness to accept criticism. See people who are working hard for you, people who are giving you detailed feedback and putting the effort to give you feedback. You can see feedback that says, Acha, you were not strategic in that meeting. That's one kind of feedback. The kind of feedback I'm telling you is another kind of feedback. It's someone who's detailed and is putting effort in and who's giving you feedback for a reason. You will find that. And believe me, all of us have it.
I have to ask you this, given your profession. Any advice you can give all of us here about how we can be better at financial planning?
Two things. One, don't outsource it. Please, don't give it to your husbands or father or brother. The fact that you're sitting in this room, doing what you do, running your home, sitting here on a Monday night, you've planned all your life, you are very financially capable. It's not that tough. I mean, if you can do everything that you can do, you can definitely start an SIP. Believe me. I mean, it's really not that difficult. I get tremendously frustrated when I see women who say, yeah, this is too technical for me. This is too hard for me. Of all the things you do in your life, this is genuinely not hard. The second is there are a lot of resources out there. Today, if you want to learn about the basics of investing, and there are a lot of forums for women to learn about this in an environment that is safe. So go embrace one of those forums, learn about it, and then start. And once you start slowly. Don't start with paper money. Money management and financial planning is not learned with paper money. It is learned with actual money. Even if you're earning money, start by investing 5,000 rupees a month. And thankfully, and I'm now pitching my industry, mutual fund industry lets you do that. So you can start by investing 5,000 rupees a month, get comfortable. And personal finance is very unique. The way, what is right for you, Gauri, is not right for me. Everyone has a different, like the story about motherhood or anything else, everyone has very different circumstances. So don't get into this contest, and X is doing this, uska return itna aaya, social media pe usne kaha uske stocks ne itna kamaya. Do what is right for you. And last thing, don't be afraid of making mistakes. A lot of women you will make mistakes in the financial planning process. And then don't say, oh, it's like they say to lady drivers, I'm a lady, oh, I'm a bad investor, I've made mistakes. 2008 financial crisis happened because a lot of men made bad investing mistakes. So everyone makes investing mistakes. Take it gradually, but start.
So, and I'm going to add to that as an ex sort of, well, not an ex chartered accountant. You're always a chartered accountant, but as an ex sort of tax planner, is that learn to do your own taxes and understand your tax return. It's very, very important.
And it
So,
doesn't take that much time, and it's really not that hard.
anyway, I'm going to open the questions up to the floor, and I'm sure there are lots out there. So please fire away. Come on, ladies, this is your one chance to pick Radhika's
We
brains.
just said ask, raise your hand, ask, talk, and everyone's silent.
Shout.
Out. Have a voice.
Hi, Radhika. This is
Hello.
Sakina here.
Hi, Sakina.
Just a very quick question. If there is something out there that you want professionally, how should one ask?
Okay.
If it's supposed to be asked
Mhm.
from somebody much higher up than where you are currently in your profession, how do you do that?
Okay. So I'm glad you've raised this question because I've been a big advocate of asking. Now, the disclaimer to asking is there is a right time to ask and there is a right way to ask. And also, when you're asking, I think make sure that you have put in make sure that you're somewhat qualified to ask, right? So the way I think about this, and I do talk about this in the book also, is if there's something you want professionally, push yourself to be qualified for it. Make sure you have the skills, the will, and then go to someone and have the conversation that, listen, this is my career aspiration. This is why I think I am qualified for it. You may not think I'm so qualified, but I can bring XYZ to the role. So, would you give me a chance? And if there's skills you think I don't have, because there will be some pushback, you can't do XYZ, I'm ready to do XYZ to make this happen. Make it a very practical conversation. I think that is important. Typically, our nervousness to ask comes from a lack of belief in our ability to do something. So, if you're asking for a CEO role and someone in front of you expresses concern, ask someone honestly, what is your concern? Why do you think I'm not a fit for that role? And if you have an answer right then, I mean, I've told one of my bosses when it came time for the CEO role that I don't have the experience for the role, but I have a lot of passion for the role, and I come from an allied industry. And if you think I'm weak at marketing and XYZ, I'm willing to do this, to do that. So have that practical conversation to make someone comfortable. And second is, I always say, don't worry if you get rejected. Even if you get rejected there, have the conversation about why you're getting rejected. Maybe 2 years later, the opportunity will open again. Maybe an opportunity will open up somewhere else and you'll be better prepared. You will have feedback to go back and ask again.
I think one of the things you talk about in your book is that chit exercise, right? So,
So I think it's always good to do a 5-year kind of planning exercise for your career. That this is where I am, and this is where I want to be. And to be here, I need XYZ skills. Some of them I have, and some of them I don't have. And I don't have them not because I'm stupid or inexperienced, but just because I haven't had a chance to do these things and then work to build those skills. There are very few things in today's availability age that you can't build. So, for instance, if you're looking for a position, that's head of product marketing and digital, and you're a good product person and a good digital person, but you don't have that marketing experience, you can go to your boss and say, I envision myself doing this, and I don't have marketing experience because no one's given me marketing exposure. Someone did that in our thing. And they came to me and I said, okay, we have a marketing team and I can't put you on the marketing team because you have a primary job, but they do reviews. Marketing has reviews. And I don't mind if you sit in on the marketing reviews. Seekh lo na tum thoda sa aake marketing. Wahan hota kya hai? Learn. I don't mind if the marketing team is working on a project and you can build a friendly enough side equation with them and do something. So that's the conversation to have.
I think more than question, I think I had a lot of takeaways from both of you. And I think one of the things that I did want to mention is I started my career at Edelweiss about 16 years ago. And that's where I met my spouse. And we used to sit literally next to each other and work together in the same team. So it's quite relatable, your whole story. And I love your LinkedIn posts, both of you. And I mean, I'm really happy that you both mentioned this today, that, everybody has to build their personal brand and sort of go out there, because I feel like as women, and two, more than women just being mothers, you kind of limit yourself in many ways and you kind of don't put yourself out there and you feel guilty. And I'm glad you said that guilt is not there, because it's taken me, I have two boys and they're almost 11 and 8 now. And I feel like when the older one was born, it took me a really long time. I took almost a 5 to 7 year break after doing corporate jobs like Edelweiss and stuff. And I literally couldn't go back to a corporate job for a very long time. And then literally I debated between coming back to Edelweiss, and that's one of the things that you mentioned as well. So I did debate going back into a corporate job. Nika happened for a few years. And it took me that, like, should I go back? He's, now he's in school, he's settled and all of that. The little one was still little, but I still felt like, okay, you know what, they have each other, it's fine. Then obviously COVID happened. And when COVID happened again, that guilt sort of, seeped in. And both of them were like, Mama, we need you at home, like school and, homeschool and, all of that. And so balancing all of that was a bit of a struggle. And so again, I decided to, I think it's just, you can do it, but it's a choice that you make. And invariably, I feel like it's the women who make that choice of just kind of, what, career is not the priority, the children are. And I think that's a mistake that we make. And then you kind of feel bad after a few months saying that, oh God, why did I quit? And then 6 months later, you're like, oh shit, like I don't want to be sitting at home doing nothing. And now here I am starting my own business. And I feel like, okay, now there's going to be flexibility. Like I'm doing my own thing, right? It's fine, my hours. And I've been out the whole day, like she said. And my kids call me when they come back from school at 3:30, Mama, where are you? And I'm like, why? Saying, but you're never at home. And they think that now that I've quit my corporate jobs, I'm always going to be around. And they don't realize that now I'm not going to be around as much. So I think that whole, balance and that sense of guilt, I think it's taken me so long to achieve this and, be here happy and, be here at this time and tell my husband, what, I'm not coming home for dinner. And it's okay that I'm not coming home for dinner because you do the same thing. So why can't I? But it's really taken a very long time. So kudos to you for achieving that so soon. And it's amazing and it's very inspiring that both of you are, doing what you're doing. And I think a lot of us women must be, after tonight, would be inspired by both of you. And I'm glad that you mentioned that whole tax planning and financial bit, because after doing that for a living at Edelweiss for clients, I feel like I'm still terrible at doing it for myself, and I do outsource it. Guilty as charged. Like I literally, I really, my husband gives me a lecture saying, Shivani, you've done this for clients, do it for yourself. And I'm just like, no, just do it, right? Like you're in finance. But yeah, I think it's time that we kind of take that, into our own hands. So thank you for reiterating that point.
Also ask for, I've learned this after one frustrating month, ask for help. Often husbands, in-laws, etc., we don't ask for help. So you have to go out and say, listen, one day you need to work from home, or tomorrow, Mark, can you come? And I'll make sure lunch is done, or XYZ. But you also have to be able to ask for help to enable yourself. People don't know. People can't read your mind. I mean, we assume people are evil. They can't read your mind. So go out and ask for help to enable things. There is a lot of planning involved in this.
Firstly, ask for help, but take full advantage of everyone around you. Even if it's like other sort of your child's classmates' mom who is happy to have the kids over, just send the kid over. Don't feel guilty about, like you said, asking. And also, I think just change that mindset of you take advantage, right? If you have your parents or your in-laws or my sisters, in my case, I'm always like, here, this is
I have a question. Hi. Thanks for sharing your journey. And I love the 5-year planning comment you made. So is this the plan you had for this 5-year era of your life? And what is the next 5-year plan looking like? So, two-part question, please.
There's no media here. Yeah, I think this was so. About 10 years ago, I decided that I want to run a retail business, and 5 years ago, I got the opportunity. And when I took over the business, I think the idea was that at rank 36, it's really not a serious business. So I want it to be meaningful. I always said I want to be the CEO of a firm that manages 1 lakh crores in assets. We're 90,000 crores, so almost there. So not so bad. And I truly believe that, by the way, if you dream it enough, you will sort of get somewhere close. I am still figuring out my 5-year plan. I have a 10-year plan, which is at least directionally that someone I really look up to career wise, I think, is Nandan Nilekani, because um, he's done a phenomenal job building the company that he has, Infosys, in the private space. But he's also made a tremendous contribution to India, on public platforms with Aadhaar and everything else he's doing. So that is what I want to see myself in 10 years. That's the direction I want to take. And yes, by the way, I am taking on roles that don't directly enable but directionally take me there and give me exposure. So I've been doing a lot more industry work. I've been doing a lot more public sector work. So even within my current job, I am trying to do things that kind of push me in that direction.
So, Radhika, you are one of our mentors for LinkedIn, and your session was one of my favorite sessions
Thank you.
because you just made it so simple. So it's not only about personal branding, but what you brought is the real experience of failing and not getting things right. And I have two questions. One, which was your favorite failure? And second, if you are failing and you know that you're going to just hit your car right there, how do you brace yourself?
Okay, so I'm going to try and not get technical because it was a financial related one. But early into my CEO career, I was quite insecure when I was made CEO. I think this is probably the first time I'm sharing this. Um, and I had a lot of bosses on top of me because I was made a very young CEO. And I had a certain set of strengths, but I was at least perceived to be weak on the investment side. Some of it is this unfortunate women bias, even though I'm an investment professional myself. You know, it came from a funny place. It came from the fact that we were 3 founders, all 3 investment professionals. But when we started Forefront, everyone just assumed that because I was the girl, I was not the investing person. I would do sales and marketing and all the other stuff. And it was fine. But when I became CEO, I was very insecure about that side. Um, and I let a lot of bosses dominate decision making on the investment side. And in 18 and 19, it led to a couple of, you know, uh, big mistakes. And that stayed with me. And it had a tough impact on the firm. But what it made me realize is that one, my investment judgment is not bad. I should trust my instinct. And secondly, I am finally the CEO, so I should assert my voice on the investment side. And now I do. So it's very important the relationships I have. So I was telling my husband a few days ago that perhaps one of my greatest elements of satisfaction is that senior and fund management professionals who report to me are 50, 55. There's a big age gap and experience gap. They now realize that I add value in their lives. And I realize I can add value in their lives. And we found that relationship. But I have come that way from 18, 19, finding self confidence, learning to trust my instinct, and realizing that, if I don't understand this, I shouldn't let anyone's opinion come down on me because finally I'm the CEO and I'm accountable for this. So that's been an important one. I don't get so upset about failure. I try to learn something from it and I try not to blame others for it. I try to take more accountability for it.
You also mentioned that don't take yourself that seriously. You're not that important. And I love that line.
True, dude. We really are not that important. We really are not that important. Ask someone who has a 2-month-old. Anyway, he doesn't listen to me.
Um, I have two questions. Are you a generalist or a specialist? And the second question is, how do you scale culture? Because you seem to have a culture of transparency and openness, which is very rare to find in especially companies in India. How does that trickle down to mid-level managers and the interns also, so that culture remains intact?
I am very much a generalist. But I've been a little fortunate that because I ran a startup, uh, and the guys said don't do investing, I ended up doing a lot of inside department work. So I know compliance well, even though I'm not a legal professional, because I actually filed the SEBI applications for Forefront. I spend a lot of time in marketing. So I know a CEO is generally a generalist. And in mutual fund, one of the interesting things in an MF CEO role is it is highly generalist. You manage teams all the way from creative to deep investing, and that too you do for private equity, fixed income, real assets. I mean, it's really you do compliance, you do legal, you do sales. I mean, it is really very wide. um, Within my generalist skill set, though, I also realize you can't be a very high level generalist. Retail is about detail. So I try to pick areas where I'm weak and every year invest in one or two of those areas. So in my early days, I spent a lot of time on the sales and marketing function because I was weak there. I think I had a year when I met about 1,500 distributors. I was traveling every week, 3 days a week to branches. Uh, my current weak spot is actually legal and operations, which I haven't done too much of. And incidentally, I've been made the chairman of the Amphi operations and legal committee. Nobody wanted to do it. And so they said, you do it because you're the only person who will say yes. And I was worried. Then I said, you know what? This is a chance to fix that blind spot. I will fix it. So I'm a generalist, but I also know that you can't succeed as a generalist because you can't have a sensible conversation with a compliance guy till you know a certain amount of compliance. So I think that's important. That's at least how I think about it. Um, and how do you scale culture? Do I have a good answer for this? I don't know if I have a great answer for this. I think you exemplify. I genuinely think you exemplify culture. Um, I'll give you examples and perhaps you can draw things out of this. Transparency is important to us. It comes in every conversation and meeting. So when you're taking decisions, think about what the impact this will have on culture is. We decided to do a 360-degree survey. Okay, because everyone's been asking. Now, the problem with 360-degree surveys, I am told, is that everyone thinks it's going to be used in your appraisal against you and your salary is going to be cut for a 360-degree survey. But we are an open culture. So we actually had an honest conversation with the team about what is the problem of doing a 360-degree survey. And people said, it's going to be used against me. It's going to be used to cut my salary. My boss is going to say XYZ. So we said, okay, let's solve this problem. This is a real piece of feedback. Appraisals are in May. We will do 360-degree in September and October. Then it's not near your appraisal. We've given explicit guidelines to the managers that you're not going to have a conversation about this linked to compensation. And the third thing we've told people is we're going to do 360s. You get your report, but you have no obligation to show it to your manager. Funnily, everyone is showing it to their manager. So I think critical decision points are the ones where I think you can make those decisions about culture. We showcase P&L when we were loss making. We showed P&L when we are profit making. We show P&L. There is nothing to hide financially. So I think you scale culture in the decision points because in each decision point you're making, there's a CFO who sees this, there's a head of HR who sees this. That then passes down the line.
So, hey Radhika. So I being from this industry, you know that I've watched your journey very closely. And I can gladly say that Edelweiss being from 36th position to 13th position, it's only because of Radhika. Somebody like me who used to never work with Edelweiss earlier, does a lot of work with Edelweiss, and you are the sole reason. And in fact, when we got the news that you were expecting, I was also one of the recipients of this news that Radhika is going to quit. And the first question on my head was, this is not the reason, and she's not a person who would quit for something like this. So this is something I've also heard. So my question to you currently is, see, I've been 17 years in this industry, okay, running a very successful advisory practice. But the gender bias still comes in. People still want to compare you with male advisors, and they feel, that, okay, how long is she going to work? Or, how do you really deal with this kind of thing, because it's like the group is filled with all male advisors, and there are very few female advisors available over there.
I think the advice to you is the same one that Gauri gave. You can genuinely look at being a female advisor or a female CEO as a liability, and you can look at it as an asset. The fact is, for you, there are so many female clients out there, and chances are most of them, by the way, feel a lot more comfortable with female advisors. And then a bunch of them are nodding here. So you have a bunch of prospective clients right here. It's a huge market, right? So how do you choose to see that? And that's what I would tell everyone, because your story, by the way, is common to every industry. It's common to restaurant industry, it's common to chemical industry, it's common to everybody. I genuinely believe glass ceiling exists as much in our head as it exists in reality. I'll tell you another incident. We are all in a conversation of ladies. I'm part of a CEO forum, and I'm the member. My husband is the spouse. Now, he's part of a group of spouses where largely everyone's a woman and there are few guys. Do you think there's not reverse gender discrimination? There absolutely is. And I'm learning this from him. Discrimination is not women to man, it is majority to minority. And sometimes it's important to realize this. So I've heard the male perspective on this issue. So I think, remember, it is majority to minority, not man to woman. And then you won't take it so personally. Chances are, if there are 10 Tamilians and one Kashmiri or one Gujarati in an audience, those 10 people will speak Tamil, and that one Gujarati will feel isolated. But he still has to find his way, right?
I had a question on personal branding, which is very close to my heart. This is Priya Bhimani, because I teach life skills and soft skills. And there are a lot of times when I speak about personal branding, and I do notice that some clients do get a little offended saying, do I really need to be a brand? And then there goes a lot in explaining to them that when you talk about personal branding, it's about your story and how you can shine out the best in your individual capacity. And as you spoke about, being fearless and being agile and also working on their emotional part of it. But how do you actually explain to them that personal branding is needed all over? It's not only for the management, but it's for each and every individual.
See, I think what I tell, and I don't advise corporates, I can only speak from what I'm telling employees and people around me. Ultimately, many of us, whether we are entrepreneurs or professionals, need to, and especially for professionals, by the way, this is something I tell my team, you need to get known in your industry. Now, either you're super networked. I'm a very shy person. I actually get scared of going out and networking and doing those conversations. That still, at some level, bothers me. You need to find a niche you need to get known in your industry, right? You're doing good work, but in some way you need to talk about it. And what I do to convince people is tell stories. I can't tell you how many opportunities I have got purely because of personal brand. Both Twitter and LinkedIn. My book was an opportunity that came straight out of LinkedIn, only out of my LinkedIn post. I had no intention of doing this. So a lot of opportunities open up to you that you don't realize because of smart personal branding. They could be career opportunities or they could be otherwise. Very often in the organizations we work in, because of organizational circumstances, you don't get the opportunity to put a side of you out there. Social platforms, personal branding is that chance to put that side of you out there. Very often you don't get the exposure you deserve. Organizations are competitive places, right? One or two people get that chance to speak in a meeting to get that project. Social media is for free, right? So many people are out there and watching. So the only thing I would say is I get disproportionate opportunities personally, and I get disproportionate opportunities for Edelweiss Mutual Fund. We run a series called Edelweiss Mutual Fund Connect, where we started in COVID calling, famous personalities to speak about investing. I knew none of these people. I would just DM them on Twitter and they would agree to speak for us for free. This is straight personal branding benefits that come. So I think the benefits are tremendous. And by the way, the downsides are zero. what is the downside of personal branding? So I'm a finance person. I mean, 100% return and zero risk. Who's not going to do that?
I'm just going to add to that, which is that when I started kind of doing a lot of the things, whether it's posting on Instagram or, my podcast even, I didn't go about it because it was about personal branding. I think that, you might do it for a very different reason. So, you might be doing it because of networking, or you want to sort of, just meet new people. You want to I'll be honest. The podcast that I started in during the lockdown came because I was really lost about how to handle the situation that we found ourselves in, and I just wanted to know what other people were doing. So it was a bit like selfish. I was just like, I want to talk to people in different industries and find out how they're handling it, and hopefully learn something from that I can apply. There wasn't anything about personal branding in that, because you don't go out there saying, I'm gonna build a personal brand, because you don't know how it's gonna work, right? So I think there needs to be a bigger sort of agenda, and the personal brand is almost a byproduct if you do it right.
I did my talk because I was scared of holding a mic before. I wanted to learn public speaking, and in a CEO role, you need to know how to do public speaking. So I did the talk to improve my public speaking abilities. Everything else came after. I did the talk to improve my public speaking abilities.
Hi, my name is Krupa Dalal. I often get this comment when I'm working that Krupa, we're not buying the product because of the firm that you're working for. We're buying it for you, and we're buying it because we believe in what you're saying. So sometimes it's very hard for me to digest that, because I feel 50% of the time it's the product that you're selling. Now, you being a CEO today, how far is this comment true when it comes to you being Radhika versus Edelweiss?
Oh, this is a very interesting question. I get this comment, Krupa, a lot. And in the early days, I struggled with how to digest it. So I will have people write to me that I'm starting an SIP and Edelweiss mid-cap fund because I saw your talk. It's a very flattering thing, but it's a very scary thing also. Or you will have a lot of people saying, I joined your company because you're a very inspirational leader, so I joined in customer service in Nagpur. Even though it's highly unlikely I will interact with someone so much in customer service in Nagpur. Um, I look at the positives of it, and of course, I think any leader, any head of a business, etc., you shouldn't feel guilty about it. Firstly, you shouldn't feel, because you are an ambassador of the company that you represent. Remember that you are an ambassador of the organization you represent, and it is a very positive thing for someone to say that. But I also remember that it comes, and in your case also, it comes with a lot of trust. So there is a lot of pressure to do the right thing and not break that trust. In fact, I think it helps me mold culture and values the most. That pressure that, oh, they bought an SIP because they saw that talk, it actually is in your head. Um, so I try to take I don't feel guilty about it. I feel very proud about it. But I also remember that there is a responsibility to live up to. And third is, I think any institution is not one person, it's not you or me. So it doesn't stop me from institution building. For instance, at one point, I used to represent 95% of the PR coverage that came out of Edelweiss Mutual Fund. That's a very unhealthy thing. But the media only wanted me to speak. I told my PR guy, let's have a target. Radhika will come down to less than 50% of the PR coverage. So we broke down all the interviews I was giving, and we said, okay, this category will give to this one of my reports, this one will give. And we are actually at about 50-55% now. So you also have to do the task of institution building. So both come hand in hand. So I use the personal brand to give people in the organization now responsibilities. I don't speak at a lot of campuses, but I make sure that opportunity doesn't go and someone else gets to speak.
All right. Thank you, Radhika and Gauri, for this wonderful conversation today. Every question and your answers, I think each and every one of us resonated with some part somewhere. We just want to extend a token of appreciation from our end for this inspiring conversation today for both of y'all.
Listen, I also just want to say a big thank you, and I also want to say that please do pick up a copy of Limitless. I read it in prep for our interaction today, but really, really, so rich in inspiration and just everything that you heard today, and a lot more that you'll get out of the book. So I'm not just saying this because you're here. I genuinely love the book.
I adore Gauri. This is the first time we're meeting. No. I just adore the black truffle pasta at the table. And I got through a lot of my pregnancy there. So that when I see you, I think black truffle pasta. I don't know if that's good or bad.
All right. All right. Thank you, everyone. We still have drinks. We'll have networking. Just get to catch up with each other. Thanks to Club Jolie's also for hosting us tonight for this wonderful setting. Thank you.